Welcome to Windows on the World. Now, we've just done a show on the BBC and their new initiative, which is called Reality Check. It started this year, and what they're trying to do is counter what they're calling fake news. Now, we're going to give you some great examples of the BBC's fake news in this very short show. So, earlier this year, the BBC established a permanent Reality Check team tasked with debunking fake news. Having just checked the reality on this BBC site, it is hardly unbiased and just reinforces the controlled narrative by making biased comparisons which form their reality check conclusions. The BBC are the main proponents of fake news in the UK. See BBC caught staging chemical attack in Syria on YouTube for the shocking depths the BBC goes to, not only in avoiding facts, but in creating war propaganda, and their unique position as number one in fake news is also explained in that video.
Suddenly, the BBC says it was filming a small rural hospital, and a game-changing atrocity happens right there, the moment they were filming.
We were filming the doctors working at this hospital when victims of an incendiary bomb attack on a school playground started pouring in.
Absolute chaos and carnage here. It must be some sort of napalm.
But a highly sceptical public stayed hostile to military intervention. Exactly 1 month later, the leaders are trying to pin a chemical weapons attack on Syria without success. The BBC airs exactly the same footage but digitally alters the word napalm for, quote, chemical weapons, hoping no one will notice.
Absolute chaos and carnage here. It must be some sort of chemical weapon.
Not only did folks notice, but it unleashed a massive public investigation, which made some extremely disturbing findings.
This is the total fabrication. From beginning to end of an atrocity with BBC reporter Ian Pannell standing amidst a tableau of very bad actors. This is completely beyond the pale.
This audio analysis by media investigator Robin Upton shows both versions are identical and from the same speech. The BBC then digitally altered the words from napalm to chemical weapon, the exact justification NATO was finding difficult to prove.
The fake report featured actors who looked like extras in a no-budget zombie comedy movie. Ian Pannell, their reporter, standing amongst them, and a fake Dr. Roller, who was actually the daughter of Syrian rebel Musa al-Qidi, giving fake testimony to the corporation via the intelligence services. This is very similar to the babies thrown from incubators fantasy, which catalysed support for the Iraq War. It was perpetuated by criminals in the US government like Tom Lantos, and the Hill and Knowlton PR group to force a UN mandate in favour of war on Iraq. This is very similar tactics we're seeing here from the BBC. And after the agreed consensus for war, the story was officially debunked as untrue, and the witness, Nurse Naira, was found to be the daughter of the Kuwaiti ambassador to the US. So again, very similar tactics being used there.
Our final witness is also using an assumed name, and again we ask our friends in the media to respect the need for her to protect her family.
Mr. Chairman and members of the committee, my name is Naira, and I just came out of Kuwait. It's the second week after an invasion. I volunteered at the Al-Adan hospital with 12 other women who wanted to help as well. I was the youngest volunteer. The other women were from 20 to 30 years old. While I was there, I saw the Iraqi soldiers come into the hospital with guns. They took the babies out of the incubators, and left the children to die on the cold floor.
Spearheaded by BBC News director James Harding, Reality Check will see a group of fact-checkers probe outlandish tales for accuracy before giving their own verdicts for readers to make an informed judgment call on that day's social media stories. Where we see a deliberately misleading story masquerading as news, we'll publish a reality check that says so. The BBC said they would strengthen their capability for interrogation of data, facts and presentation. Yes, you heard it right, interrogation of data. Sounds like they're using the kind of language coming to them via the Tavistock Institute, British Psychological Association and think tanks like Demos. See our shows on the Tavistock, British Psychological Association and Demos, and our show Fake News Media Echo Chamber Exposed. Their reality check site is not up to date and certainly not up to their claim of interrogating data. James Harding remarked, "The BBC can't edit the internet, but we won't stand aside either." Fighting talk from the continuously oblivious and overblown globalist PR mouthpiece, which cannot see beyond its own biased navel. Well, they have always slapped themselves smugly on the back regarding their tongue-in-cheek and satirical views, haven't they? How are they going to pull in their target audience, i.e. those under 60, the young and women? Yes, these are their target audience. Reality Check will be expanded and will fact-check the most popular outliers on social media and refute claims if they are found to be false. Yes, they're using this strange language. They've invented a word called outliers. O-U-T-L-I-E-R-S. We will aim to use styles and formats online, on TV and on radio that ensure the facts are more fascinating and grabby than the falsehoods. The trivial minds of the perpetrators are revealed here by the use of a non-word, such as grabby. The vacuous world of media is full of this kind of non-communicable non-language. Ah well, at least we have the admission that it's going to be trivia dressed up as real news, presented by vacuous, egocentric, mentally helpless, Soros-created neoliberals. Well, I've looked on their website and can't find David Attenborough's fake news on climate change being debunked. And what about their political commentator and editor, the BBC award-winning Laura Kuenssberg, with her non-journalistic bias and lack of investigatory powers? The proposed victims of the BBC's reality check are the young in society who are increasingly turning to social media and online streaming services to find amusement, information and news. Well, having checked the site, it is well short of all three. So the reality check for the BBC is they are at the very least 15 years out of date. The news horse has bolted and the BBC stable is well and truly empty.
Now, more on the latest building collapse in New York. You might have heard a few moments ago I was talking about the Salomon Brothers building collapsing. And indeed it has. Apparently that's only a few hundred yards away from where the World Trade Center towers were. And it seems that this was not a result of a new attack. It was because the building had been weakened during this morning's attacks. We'll probably find out more now about that from our correspondent, Jane Stanley. Jane, what more can you tell us about the Salomon Brothers building and its collapse?
Well, only really what you already know. Details are very, very sketchy. There's almost a sense downtown in New York behind me, down by the World Trade Centers, of just an area completely closed off as the rescue workers try to do their job. But this isn't the first building that has suffered as a result. We know that part of the Marriott Hotel next to the World Trade Center also collapsed as a result of this huge amount of falling debris from 110 floors of the two twin towers of the World Trade Center. As you can see behind me, the Trade Center appears to be still burning. We see these huge clouds of smoke and ash, and we know that behind that there's an empty piece of what was a very familiar New York skyline, a symbol of the financial prosperity of this city, but completely disappeared now, and New York is still unable to take on board what has happened to them today.
Presumably there were very few people in the Salomon building when it collapsed. I mean, there were, I suppose, fears of possible further collapses around the area.
That's what you would hope, because this whole downtown area behind me has been completely sealed off and evacuated, apart from the emergency workers. That was done by the mayor, Rudy Giuliani, much earlier today because of, course, the dreadful collapse of the Twin Towers of the World Trade Center. But New York, very much a city still in chaos. The phones are not working properly, the subway lines are not working properly. And we know that down there near the World Trade Center there are 3 schools that are being turned into triage centers for emergency treatment. And I know that over in New York Harbor, where the famous Statue of Liberty is.
Jane, I think many of us, when we heard the news, perhaps on the radio earlier today, were completely flabbergasted by it and just couldn't comprehend it. I mean, it almost sounded too far-fetched. I was wondering what it's felt like for you being in Manhattan. Well, unfortunately, I think we've lost the line with Jane Stanley in Manhattan. Perhaps we can rejoin her and follow that up later.
Join me, Mark Windows, with Tony Hurst for Windows on the World live every Sunday 9 to 11 p.m. GMT at autonomousmedia.net. Join me every Thursday at 1 a.m. GMT on The Ocelli Effect with Chuck Ocelli at autonomousmedia.net and ocelli.com. Shows archived on the sites and windowsontheworld.net.